What if we can positively impact society by reshaping the mindsets of young men? And while we're at it, let me ask you, what does it mean to be a man? My name is Dennis Meralda, a father, a teacher, a coach, a mentor, and a principal with over 2 decades of experience shaping the minds and characters of young men across the United States. If these questions resonate, if you're a young man looking to improve your life or a parent looking for tools to help your son become the best version of himself, the Building Men Podcast was created for you. What is up, everyone? Welcome to the Building Men Podcast, or welcome back if you have been here before. Honored today to be joined by my man, Preston Smiles. I'll do a quick bio on Preston. We'll get into a couple things about his past, his books that are either published or coming out, his role as a father. But Preston is unapologetically himself. He is the epitome of someone who's committed to the work and to humanity. He is an abundance coach, a thought leader, a conscious businessman, a father, a husband, experiential speaker, and the author of the newest groundbreaking book, Spiritual Millionaire: Unlock the 7 Inner Laws of Abundance and Money, and a book that I just read for the second time, Love Louder: 33 Ways to Amplify Your Life. Preston Smiles is a force to be reckoned with on the personal growth scene, and I will tell you, Preston Smiles, I will say he is cooler than the other side of the pillow. There are a couple of guests that I have on that are they're just cool. My kids joke with me all the time. I'm not as cool as I thought I was, or that I once was. I feel like Preston, no matter how old he is, he's going to be that cool guy that you know. So Preston, what's up, my man? Good to see you.
Ooh, ooh.
There it is.
Yeah. Let's
Love it,
go.
So now that you're a dad, right? Are you still the cool guy? Do you still feel as cool as you once did now that you're a father?
Yes, in
Okay.
many ways. I would never say I wouldn't categorize myself as a cool guy. I would just
Okay.
say I'm sort of like an everyman who made it, right? I think a lot of people resonate with me, especially men, because they're
Yep.
like, I grew up a full dude with all the trauma and all the craziness and like playing sports and fighting and spray painting and getting into trouble and all the different stuff that most boys go through. And I still surf and skateboard and I figured out some universal principles and some laws that have supported me in filling my cup in such a way that there's so much overflow. And I genuinely, without a shadow of a doubt, love my life like as is and have for years. And I think that feels cool to people.
Mm-hmm.
When you meet someone who's fully in their pocket and appreciates themselves. When I look in that mirror, I go, yeah, you've made some mistakes, but you are a unique emanation of the Most High. You are a beauty. You are a unique specimen. And I just love myself, bro. I genuinely do. And I do because I hated myself for so long.
Right.
Right. Because the pendulum was on this side, I know what it feels like to not, be in your power, to not love yourself, to compare yourself to other people. And I now get that my tree, how it was created by, what I would call God, divine intelligence, that tree known as me, that seed was not a mistake. And so I own the fullness of my seed, and that seed contains the blueprint for the entire tree, and you know the rest.
To learn more about our programs, including one-on-one mentorship coaching, the foundation, our Building Men online group community for young men, or to bring a Building Men experience to your school, check out our website, buildingmen.io, or click the links in the bio. Now, back to the show. Absolutely. And I appreciate you saying that. When I think about the Building Men program, one of the big character pillars that I talk to young men about is the importance of authenticity, right? And you just emanate this authenticity. But I would love to hear about, where that came from. You talk about growing up, you were the dude, you played the sports, you did this stuff. There's a lot of funny stories that you share in Love Louder. We'll get into a couple of them today. But who were you as a young man? You grew up in LA, correct?
I grew up in LA,
Okay.
city kid. Super early, my parents used to argue about whether I was special needs, and eventually the school ended up testing me and placed me in what at the time, now keep in mind, I'm saying this, at the time it was called the retarded kids
Yeah.
classes.
Yep.
And so I was placed in those classes and made up a lot of stories about myself. And so that plus the wave of gang activity and how all of us wanted to be tough guys because we didn't get the rites of passage that, men and boys got, 100 years ago. And so being raised on Ultimate Warrior and Terminator and GI Joes and gangs.
He-Man.
Yeah, exactly. I just wanted to be tough.
Yep.
And so I started doing all the things that you probably don't want your little boy to do, and had a moment at 15 that essentially changed and transformed my life forever. But the beautiful thing about that moment, even though it's tragic, is at 11, something happened at 11 that saved my life at 15. And at 11, I started smoking weed for the first time. And my dad caught me. And he sat me down and he said, I'm going to give you 24 hours to think about this. He said, I want you to think about everybody's life that you know who smokes weed. And then I want you to think about you telling me you want to be the next Magic Johnson and the next Michael Jordan. And we'll talk tomorrow. And when we do, if you choose and you say you want their life, then you get to have their life. But if you want to be like Michael Jordan and Magic Johnson, you got to make a different decision, but we'll talk about it. 24 hours goes by. I'm scared. I'm like, this dude's going to punish me. He's going to take everything. I'm going to, get a whooping and all the other stuff. And we sit down and he said, listen, marijuana is a plant. It's of the earth. Your uncles do it. I've done it. I'm not demonizing that. However, it comes at a price. So what do you choose? And at 11 years old, he gave me enough information and I really started to think about it. I was like, do I want their lives? Like these little gangster kids on the corner, do I want to actually be that? And so I said, no, I don't choose it, Daddy. And he said, okay, so here's what I want you to know. He said, I want you to know that you're a leader and that you're going to be a boy and you're going to do boy things. But you're such a leader that if everybody is going right, but something in you says, I need to go left, you'll do it anyway. That's who you are. And he just poured into me. And it was like this snapshot moment. And I sort of sat there and I'm like, is that it? And he was like, that's it. And I just went back outside and I'm like, I didn't get in trouble. Like, but it sat with me. So now fast forward to 15 years old, my friends hit me up to come out and go. We used to do these things called runouts, where we would go into a liquor store and grab as much alcohol as we could and then just run out. And my friend Scott called me and he was like, all right, we're coming to pick you up. And I was like, I don't think I'm going. And he was like, oh, don't be a little beep.
Yep.
That whole thing. And just intuition wise, now I couldn't even spell intuition at 15. I didn't even know what that meant. But my dad's voice popped back in my head. If everybody's going right, but something in you says go left, you will do it anyway because you're a leader. And so they pressured me a little bit. And I said, no, I'm not going. And we hung up the phone. And within an hour, every single person in that blue Astro van that I was in, the night before that, the night before that, and the night before that, every single one of them was shot. And my best friend, Scott, was shot in the head and died. And so this was such a pivotal moment for so many reasons, because I had survivor's guilt. I had all this stuff coming up. At his funeral, I didn't even cry. I was so numbed from all of the, programming that we do to little boys to keep them from crying and feeling their feelings. And it turned into this whole world where I ended up moving to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I went to this really rich kid school where I was the only Black male at the entire school. And I got to see how all of us were being programmed and conditioned. And then I got to see even deeper because the kids at the kids at the all white school were all listening to Tupac, Biggie,
Mhm.
Outkast, and gangster music. And the kids at my former school were doing the exact same thing. But the difference was the kids at the Pittsburgh school were going to Yale and Harvard, and the kids at my other school were going to jail. And it really dawned on me. I could pull far enough back to go, oh my God, this is about expectation. There's an expectation for one group and another one for another one. And just enough of that sort of created space for me to see that there was a lot of different games being played and that I got a choice in how I wanted to play the game. And my life has never been the same.
Wow, dude. That's a crazy story. The blue Astro van. And I'll tell you what, it resonates with the don't be a pussy
Mm-hmm.
conversation. It's still something that young men are struggling with to this day, and then will continue to struggle with moving forward. And you mentioned, Preston, the idea of rites of passage, and we'll get deep into the idea about boys can cry, right? We'll talk a
Yeah.
lot about that. I know that's something that's near and dear to your heart. What was a rite of passage moment that you felt like would have helped you, that you wish you had when you were growing up, that if you had this rite of passage, you would have avoided some pitfalls in the future?
Absolutely. Well, one, I think it's important for especially, you know, 10, 11, 12 years old. There's a lot of testosterone. There's a
Mhm.
lot of energy flowing. There's a transition happening from, the little kid that, just wants to run around to the like one that knows that girls exist and is aware of their, genitals
Mhm.
and there's all the stuff coming up, right? So what would have been awesome and what I'm going to do with my kids is to take them into nature, take them outside of the environment that they're used to and strip away all of the technology and all the things that become weapons of mass distraction and get still, get quiet and listen. And then with my boys, I'm going to ask them questions. And then I'm going to have some of my friends there who I believe are healthy masculine role models. And we're going to talk. We're going to talk about the stuff that everybody's afraid to talk about. Like I didn't get the birds and the bees sex conversation. They just skipped it. They didn't even, you know, all of that was taboo in my growing up. And so I just figured it out through the internet. Well, there was no internet. I figured
Right.
it out through 7-Eleven. They used to have these
Oh,
magazines
yeah.
uh, with the little cover in front of them.
Yes. Yes.
Um, you get it. You get it.
Yep.
All of that was how I figured out how to be a man. Television raised me, gangster rap raised me. And I think it's important that we return to nature, right? That we get still, that we can listen, uh, and have enough of like a distinct difference from regular life to this passage moment where when you come back, right, there's a crossing of a threshold, right? When we step into this parking lot and we get back in this car, you will not be the same boy who walked in those woods. That.
From that answer, anyone who's listening to this podcast understands why Preston as a guest on this show, it had to happen. You're speaking my language, my friend. One thing that you talk about in the book, it was chapter 2 of Love Louder, was the idea of being intentional. And I absolutely love that, because one thing that I harp on here is if you're parenting, you have to be really intentional with the lessons that you're teaching your kids incrementally, depending on the developmental needs that they have at that moment in their life. So I'm going to pull out one story from the book, and then I'm going to turn it into, okay, how would you handle this as a parent as well? You talk about you're 9 years old and you and your buddies used to create these, you called them Molotov cocktails in the book, and it was ketchup, urine, mud, rocks, and you would get it all together and you would run around and you were being little a-hole boys and you would throw it at people and throw it at garage doors. And I'm sure you had the time of your life. We all did the stupid stuff growing up, right? Like we all did those
Yes.
kinds of things. And I could go back to thinking about, it's like Lord of the Flies. You get a group of boys together and you go through the things. So with your own kids now, and when you think about being intentional with your own kids, how do you balance and temper their sense of adventure with keeping them understanding that you have to be between these guardrails, especially in this tech world that they're growing up in right now?
Absolutely. I think one of the most important things in parenting in general is creating a sense of safety between the child and the parent. Um, and that's most important because when you think about it, and I'll go back to myself and all of my friends, we lied to our parents about everything.
Mm-hmm.
Our parents were not safe beings, right? If we actually shared what was going on with us, they may, punish us or take things away or shame us or try to restrict even more. And so to me, one of the best ways to support a child, especially a boy, is to be honest about your process. There's this thing that happens that I've seen in many people where they separate themselves and put themselves in a hierarchical position above their children. And for me, with my children, when they do epic crazy stuff, we're here on 4 acres and they get into some stuff back there. They go look for snakes, and one of my kids is into killing all the bugs, right? And so instead of shaming him for killing the bugs, he's just curious, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's just trying to figure out what happens when he smushes them, and he'll find the roly-polies and just squeeze as tight as possible. I'll say, hey, buddy, I love that you love these animals. It is really cool. And guess what? They have a mommy and a daddy, and they want to get back to their mommy and daddy. So what do you think? What do you think we should do if they want to get back to their mommy and daddy? And I'll pose a question, right? Now, some of you may be saying, well, your kids are really young and that won't work. I also was a 3rd grade school teacher. I've had 20-something jobs with children, and we're going to foster, adopt. I love kids, like absolutely love them. And I'm telling you without a shadow of a doubt that when you talk to a child in such a way that you respect who they are and how they see the world, they feel safer. Their nervous systems relax. And in that relaxation, they can share their inner world and what's going on for them. I hate that the suicide rate is so high right now in little boys. And I think a big part of it and all the drugs and things that people are doing is a cry for help. They want to feel again. And the best way, right? It's not information, it's demonstration. The best way to lead your children is to demonstrate what you would like to see in them through yourself and allow them into your inner world. When I get sad or when I get mad, I tell them, Daddy is very upset right now. I'm going to go outside and I'm going to do a primal scream. Does anybody want to come with me? Right? My children, it's really cool. My wife and I got into an argument last year. And it was really cool to see what one of my sons did, because we were arguing in front of them, which is not very often. It's one of the first times they ever even seen it. And we've had conflicts, but we haven't argued in front of them. And I started to notice that my threshold of tolerance was getting lower and lower, and we were both getting louder, and I'm the most dangerous person in the house. And so I removed myself. I said, nope, I'm done. And I walked into the other room, and everybody's silent. And then my son, Zai, one of the twins, comes in the room, and he says, Daddy, you apologize to Mommy. Mommy is crying, and you apologize to her. And initially, I was so mad. I was like, tell Mommy to apologize to me. And then I got it. This is a moment where instead of me telling him what to do, I get to show him. I get to show him what a man does and what a man prioritizes, right, in these moments. And so I re-regulated myself, did some deep breathing, and got back to the truth of my being, which is, what is my intention for this relationship? What is my intention in teaching these children? My intention is for them to see a man that is humble, a man that gets that we're dealing with each other's nervous systems. And so I walked back in and I said, you're right, Zach. I'm going to go talk to Mommy. Okay. And I went in there and I said, I'm so sorry. My intention is for us to work this out. I'd love to start with a hug. I love you so much. And having them watch that was, to me, one of the more proud moments where they get to see how repair happens. Because a lot of us I grew up in divorce household, multiple divorce households, and I never got to see the repair. I never got to see the humbleness. I got to see the catty, immature, uh, you know, wounded child fights, but I never got to see the adult enter the room. And so I'm having to figure this all out myself because my parents didn't have the tools or the consciousness to do it. Right? Anybody listening to this podcast, if you're a parent, the fact that you're listening to this podcast already says to me something very big. Now, I want to talk about something that's super controversial, that usually pisses people off at first, and then they get it at some level. And that is, I believe that a lot of well-meaning mothers, hear the words I'm saying, well-meaning mothers, accidentally beat or tried to beat out the parts of the masculine that they were wounded by. And in doing so, they created a scenario where when women are around, the boys, and I'll speak for myself, feel like they're on duty. So because my mom was cheated on and abused and all the other things, what she did was she did her best to create the perfect gentleman. This perfect little boy who's well-mannered and all the things. And that's exactly what she got, front-facing. When the church friends are around and everybody's around, she got the perfect boy. But the moment she left, because you can't beat our biology, right? She wanted the wild part of me gone because that resembled what my dad was. It resembled what the people who hurt her when she was 17 and 19 and 24 and all the things. And so everything that she didn't like about the masculine, she tried to educate and mold out of me. The issue is that there'll always be, we will still have the reptilian. We are still animals. And so I just got better at hiding it from her. And then now I have this association because from, let's call it 7, 8, 9 years old to 17, I have turned into a really good liar. Right? Now you think that if somebody practiced something from 7 to 17, whatever you practice more of, you get more of. That's what you become. And so now you send me out into the world to go date women and to be a boyfriend. But my association, my nervous system, the pattern in my body is women aren't safe. Right? Show them this face. And then when you're with your boys and you're outside, you can go do that thing. This is one of the biggest problems. I believe that the porn addiction, sex trafficking, everything is connected to this. And I'm not blaming women because the real problem is that most men have not been taught how to be men. That's why I love this podcast. They haven't been taught how to. So how can they teach a boy when they weren't taught?
Right.
Right? This is some of the biggest work in the game because you tear up the family. You put this job, the onus on a woman, and she cannot teach a boy how to be a man. And so our work, your work, my work, and anybody else who gets it, our work is to help restore the healthy masculine for them to still have that killer inside, but know how to move it, how to use it. Right? That's what I want my kids to see.
Right. You want to be the warrior in the field or in the farm, not the farmer in the war, right? You want to have the ability, but keep it under wraps. Jordan Peterson talks about that a lot. That answer, there's so much there to dig into. And one, I just wanted to compliment you on the intentionality of your parenting with your kids. So when Zai came to you and he said, you need to go apologize to mommy right now, there was that moment. And as men, we all have that moment. And as a father, I've had the moment as well. And I've made so many mistakes, Preston, along my journey, trying to look a certain way and to be the
Yes.
cool dad or whatever, the tough guy. When I recognize our kids also need to hear the stories that are not the time that we hit the game-winning shot, that we rode into the sunset with a cheerleader on our shoulder, the time that we missed the layup, that we made the mistake. And for us as men to be able to say, I made a mistake in this moment. My temper got the best of me. I was unable to handle my emotion. And what I did was I raised my voice to a point where someone who I love was crying. And you, as my children, are watching me as your role model do this. So to be able to have that moment with your kids, that's really, really powerful. What you just mentioned after you said that piece, Preston, it's like a year's worth of a podcast right there. Like we could dig into that for once a week for the next year to really uncover that. But like one thing I need to ask you about then is what, I don't even know where to even go with this. There's so much. So
Yep.
what we need to do is to understand that. I agree. I'm thinking about that on a deeper level with the traumas that women have been they've had to bear the burdens of the damage that was done to them by another man. So they wanted to create this perfect little boy. I had a lot of wounds in my childhood from my father, and I connect with that story that you told. As I think about it, I'm like, you know what? I did that too in my life. I became this seeker of approval, people pleaser guy. And you talk about that you were that guy as well. And because I wanted to show the world a certain face because I knew what was under the covers and I didn't like that guy either. And that anything that was associated to me being like my old man, I buried it down. It was still there. So what's a lesson or two that recognizing that this is the case? And for you, how did you get over that? Because I want to say that you are very healthy in your masculinity right now. How did you overcome that between 7 and 17 years old, all that conditioning? How did you get free from that?
Mm-hmm. A lot of trial and error, a lot of reflection, self-reflection, really looking at and putting myself in the fire. One of the best things that anybody could do for themselves, if they really actually genuinely want to like squeeze the juice out of this life, is to put themselves in immersive scenarios where expansion happens. Right. So I went and did a bunch of workshops and seminars and read a bunch of books. And when podcasts came out, then I did that. And like I'm constantly studying and looking at myself and looking at the results and saying, is this what I desire? Is this what I truly want? And you know, there was a moment when my wife and I, because we've been together 10 years,
Mm-hmm.
there was a moment almost 3 years ago where we were at the brink of divorce. And that for me was the biggest like hammer, because we have 4 children and because I was already Preston Smiles, the guy with all the things. And I started to go, okay, something's off here. And what I discovered, which is what you just spoke to, was I had been in competition with my dad since I was 13. And so trying to prove that I was better than him actually caused a lot of stagnation. And the fruit doesn't belong to the tree, it belongs to the ecosystem. But I was keeping a lot of the fruit. I was trying to hold on to it and give another one, a body of water without an inlet and an outlet is a swamp. And swamps create disease, right? And so I had been holding on so tight to trying to be the perfect guy and the perfect husband, because that was the pattern that I played out with my mom. And so my mom is this powerhouse Virgo woman. And of course, I meet this woman named Alexi, who's a powerhouse Virgo woman, to get the same freaking lesson, right? And so I was playing a game where I thought that if I just did more dishes, more laundry, if I woke up more than her in the middle of the night to get the kids, if I drove them to school and did all the things, if I was super dad, she would somehow understand that I needed more hugs, more recognition, more love, more soft touch. And it just wouldn't happen because I was doing it from a deficit. I was doing it from,
Right.
and it turned into resentment, right? And then we were getting further and further and further apart. And we had a moment, an explosive moment that sort of revealed all of this. And it hit me like a ton of bricks that I had never actually loved her the way that I wanted to, that she was getting another well-crafted mask because I was truly afraid that if I showed her all of me, that she wouldn't love me, that she would leave me. If I showed her the dirty parts, the ugly thoughts, if I allowed her to see the vulnerable parts of me that actually genuinely needed her, right? The story I would be making up, and most men make up, is that if I need her, if I need this hug, if I need this compliment, that I'm weak somehow. And it turned out to be one of the most beautiful things ever, because our marriage is thriving. One, two, I learned to ask for what I desire and to give her the opportunity to say yes or no, but at the very least, get her the opportunity to know me and where I am at this time. And just to give you a little context and to go all the way back to elementary school, when I was placed in those special education classes, the story I took on was that I was a burden. And so I became an out of the way kid. My mom would say, "Hey, do you want $5 for lunch?" I'd say, "No, I'll just take 2." I had no problems. I never broke a bone, never, not once. And I didn't break a bone, not because, I'm somehow a superhero. I didn't break a bone because I knew that it would be more stressful on them. My dad was moving through drug addiction and all these other things, and my mom was trying to hold the whole family. And so the story I made up was that if I have needs, if I have desires, and I put them in the space, I will be a burden to them. I'm already in the retarded classes. I'm already behind the 8 ball. And so now that's my whole life trying to be the hero. And it worked. I got rich. I got known in the self-development space. I got all this recognition, and yet there were still some parts that were still scared to come out. And sometimes our greatest rejection produces the greatest direction. And this big, heavy blow to my marriage, this fear of actually losing my marriage, forced up all the stuff that needed to be looked at and loved on and appreciated. And it's why I can sit here today and speak some of this. This is vulnerable as F,
Yep.
right? And this is what makes me powerful. This is what actually makes me powerful, not the show. What makes me powerful is that I've been in the mud recently and come out even better. Right? I have been blessed beyond measure because I keep saying yes and I keep going into the parts that I'm most afraid to go into.
And it's so scary too. And as men, that's where the good stuff happens. It's like you're taking your mess and you're making it into your message. The couple things. I never thought about the broken bones thing. There's so many connections here, Preston. I never broke a bone in my life. Gotten hurt plenty of times, never broke a bone. The love of my life is a powerhouse Virgo woman, and so I definitely resonate with that as well. And I think it comes down to that spot where you recognize I need to take the leap of faith, and the safety net is going to appear to truly show those ugly parts of ourselves to our significant other. It's really hard to do because we want to be seen as this, like you mentioned, this hero guy. But I think what the women in our life, if they're truly worth their salt, they're looking for you to be like, this is all of me. This is all the stuff that's here. One thing that you talk about in your book, and again, I resonated with so many pieces of it. If you haven't read Love Louder, like you haven't read that book yet, read it and read it again and again and again, because there's so many life lessons that are so approachable. And I love the audiobook piece of it too, just because it's you speaking. We got on today. We met each other for the first time 45 minutes ago, but I felt that I had known you already for many years because of this. You make the lessons very approachable. There were so many things in there that I myself, in the past 20 years since I started building men, have talked to young men about the lessons that you share. And a lot of it is around vulnerability. It's basically like showing up as your authentic self and not caring what other people think. And as a recovering people pleaser, that's hard for me as well. One thing that I loved is you read the poem, The Two Wolves. And it's usually the second or third building men meeting that I have when I enter a school district for the first time. I read this poem to the boys, and then we really dig into what does it really mean. So I'm going to read it for the audience really quick. It'll take a minute, and then we're going to talk about what it means to you and at what point in your life did this really come out to you. So the two wolves. An old Cherokee is teaching his grandson about life. A fight is going on inside of me, he said to the boy. It's a terrible fight, and it is between two wolves. One is evil. Is anger, envy, sorrow, regret, greed, arrogance, self-pity, guilt, resentment, inferiority, lies, false pride, superiority, and ego. The old grandfather continued, the other is good. He is joy, peace, love, hope, serenity, humility, kindness, benevolence, empathy, generosity, truth, compassion, and faith. The same fight is going on inside of you and inside of every other person too. The grandson thought for a minute, and he asked his old grandfather, Granddad, which wolf will win? The old Cherokee simply replied, the one you feed. Gives me chills hearing you read that in the book. And it's so true. You talk a little bit about reticular activating system, wholeheartedly believe in that. What are the things that you look for, the things that you see, the wolf that you feed is the one that will win. So talk to us a little bit about how that poem resonated with you and maybe an instance in your life where you really had to think about which wolf you feed.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's so much to unpack inside of that poem, proverb, whatever you want to call it. I think the main thing to understand is that we get what we focus on. We get in life what we focus on. And we don't just get it like later, we get it instantly. There's a price that we pay when we are out of alignment. People often come to me and they want, they're like, how did you make your dreams come true? And I say, I didn't chase my dreams. I chased alignment. And when I was in alignment, dreams chased me. Now, okay, then the game is, what is alignment? Alignment is whatever is there, right? Being with what is in the cleanest, most loving way possible. That's alignment. Being with what is in the most loving and cleanest way possible. That means, okay, so something's happening because life's, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a breakup, a breakdown, a moment where somebody can't play a video game and everybody's upset. How do I navigate that in the most loving and cleanest way possible? First step to any of this is breath, because the moment we go into what is known in the trauma and nervous system world, the moment we go into hypervigilance, the breath goes away, right? And the less breath we have and oxygen we have in the body and the brain, the less choice we have. So I teach and often explain to people that the best thing you could do in any given moment when making any decision is to pause and breathe into the bottom of your belly. Just take a cleansing breath and just recenter. And then number 2 is acknowledge what is. And there's a term called spiritual bypassing, where we try to hurry up and get to the positive. We try to hurry up and jump past what's occurring. And when we do that, we don't allow the energy that's there to cycle through. And going back to nervous system and trauma work, most people who experience high levels of trauma, it's not the trauma that's the problem. It's the discharged energy that's still in their bodies. It's like a beach ball, right? Trying to push a beach ball underwater. It always slides out somewhere, usually where you don't want it to. And so after we have breath in the body, we just acknowledge like, oh, I am so angry. oh, and we put a sound on it. Oh, I'm feeling so sad right now. With my kids, we do this all the time. We want to acknowledge and appreciate exactly where they are, not trying to get them to hurry up and feel better. My kids fight about the stupidest stuff every day, 100 times a day. But the beautiful piece, because we know this, is I don't try to get them out of it. I let it complete. I let them cry and feel it. And we point them. We say, hey, you're very upset. I see that. Yes. Do you want to hit the pillow? Do you want to scream into the pillow? Do you want to hit it? Daddy and mommy will do it with you. And we create practices where we have breath in the body, we acknowledge what is, and then we go to powerful question, which is, what would love do now? What would love do now? Okay. So we just took some breath. We just acknowledged what is and felt it all the way through. What would love do now? Oh, well, now that it's past, I guess love would apologize, or love would take a moment. You know, love would send the message. Love would give the hug. Letting someone sit in a powerful question and find it for themselves is some of the most powerful work in the game. Because if you tell your kid what to do, it's different than them coming up with what it is that they believe is the best choice for them. And to get back to a point of homeostasis, right? And just to give a little more context, homeostasis in the body is like room temperature, right? To get back to, let's say something happens, your child or you flips your lid, and now you're in, it's 85 degrees in your body and you are going bananas, and you're in fight, you're in flight, you're in freeze, or you're in appease, but something is happening, you're not regulated. To get back to homeostasis, at the very least, it takes 20 minutes for the brain and everything to calm back down. At the most, it could take 4 days. Anywhere from 20 minutes to 4 days to get back to a level of regularity where you're normal again, right? Because again, we're still animals and we cannot figure everything out with the intellect. The bodies also have to have their moment, and they will always have their moment while we're in these bodies. So what would love do now? And then the last piece is just to celebrate that you caught it, which is a form of disassociating. So what I do with myself and what I do with my clients and what I do with my kids is I have them push back and go, wow, look what you just did. Right? What I do with myself when I have these moments is I celebrate me. I go, wow, Pete, that was crazy. But look at you. You figured it out. You went and got into nature. You went and got some air. You went and apologized to your wife, even when your ego didn't want to. That's awesome, bro. And I celebrate me and the completion of the thing to the degree that I can. And that's the cycle.
Powerful stuff right there. Well, I'm going to pause real quick and say the first 5 people that send me an email, buildingmencoach@gmail.com, with the subject line, what would love do now? I'll send you a copy of Preston's most recent book, Spiritual Millionaire, Unlock the 7 Inner Laws of Abundance and Money. So if first 5 people that get that to me, I will send you a copy of the book. So as a quick pause, and I want to hear about the book right now, and then I'll get back into masculinity before we wrap up here. Tell me a little bit about the book. Who's it for? What, the quick elevator pitch on it.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's for anybody who identifies as spiritual and who has struggled with understanding how to experience abundance. Most people, they have an association with abundance and money, but abundance is a state of consciousness. It's a state of being. It is, abundant relationships, abundant expression, right? Abundant vitality, right? Abundance is a whole bunch of things. And yes, I got all the toys and the cars and the houses and the money and all that stuff, but you know what's beautiful and why I'm so equipped to write this book in particular is before I had any of this, I genuinely would stop and smell the roses. Always. Like I've loved my life all the way through. And even on this property, every morning I walk out and the cicadas are singing and doing their song, and the wind is blowing and the breeze and the trees, and I'm just aware of all of it. And there are universal principles and laws that, when you understand them and use them properly, you can experience a life that is beyond your current imagination. That's why I wrote this book. Yes, the money piece is a part of it, but it's a very thin slice. It definitely will help you understand money. And just to give you like a frame of reference, most people think to themselves and say out loud, I'm spending money. This is a improper use of language, because spending means it never comes back.
Mm-hmm.
The language we want to use is circulate, because to circulate something means it returns to the sender. And there are energetics, right? I'm a planter. So I plant lots of trees, and I've literally planted probably over 150 different plants on this property. And what I love, and I've had this moment many times, is I'll have this moment where I'm digging this hole, and I'm using a shovel. And I'll have so much gratitude for the shovel. And the shovel is the money. We use money, and then we plant with our vibration this let's call it petunia into the ground, right? And or this rose bush goes into the ground. Now, the moment it goes into the ground, it's going into the law. It's going into the law. The law is impartial. It just says yes. And a lot of us don't understand that there's my opinion, God is like electricity. Electricity says, hey, you can plug up your iPhone, you could plug up your computer, you can plug up a Tesla, you can plug up a city. The only question I have for you is, do you have the infrastructure to plug it up? The more infrastructure, the best ability is availability. So the more infrastructure we have to experience God's green, beautiful earth, the more we will experience in that moment, and we will set off a cascade, a symphony of things. And so when I plant those things in the ground, the law takes over. It's not luck, it's law, right? It's not personal, it's principle. The roots go in, and the process of germination starts, and then I don't have to do anything else but take care of the soil. We are the soil, right? It's such a beautiful thing, man. And I'm so over the top excited about this, especially if you get it to young people.
Mm-hmm.
I wish I would have known this stuff. This is all trial and error. 10 years ago, I was a surf instructor making $30,000 a year. I'm now a multi-millionaire with 4 kids, 5 businesses, 6 houses, and all the toys and all that stuff. And none of it is my God, because I'm still operating from the exact same principles I did then. Elevation requires separation. What are you willing to separate from, right, in this process?
And when you talk about in the book, Preston, the double boomerang effect, the give and receive, you tell a story about you walk into it, and if you're a young man listening to it, this will resonate. You walk into a situation, you're a little bit nervous. You talk about the first day of junior high school, and you see the group sitting over to the side. This was at a big professional development experience that you were going to. The cool kids were over there on one side laughing, and there was one person sitting alone, and you're like, I don't want that person to be alone. And it turned out that it was Bruce Cryer that you were able to connect with in that moment. And that connected you to a publisher that you were able to write your first book. And that's what you're doing, is you are, even by being on this podcast, like you're throwing that boomerang out in one hand, receiving on the other hand. And the thing that I love about what you do is you talk in approachable ways. Like you talk about like being grateful or having gratitude. It's not about the glass being half empty or half full. It is being grateful that you have the glass. Like I have the glass, and you do have that. I have 2 more questions for you. I want to respect your time here. First is, all right, so Zai comes to you and he says to you, loaded question, Daddy, what does it mean to be a man? What does that even mean? I'm trying to figure it out. How do you talk to your kid about it, and how does that change as he grows into his manhood?
Yeah, I would say to him, that's a great question. And I'm in the inquiry of it myself. Um, it's a forever unfolding thing, and we are participating, co-creating what that answer is. But I can tell you what, the first step is to be true to thyself, like to actually love and honor what is true for you. And I'll give you a quote that is one of my favorite quotes in the entire world. And it comes from the Gnostic Gospels of Thomas. And this is what I would say to my kids. The quote is, if you bring forth what is within you, and what you bring forth will save you. But if you do not bring forth what is within you, what you do not bring forth will destroy you.
Mm.
Now that goes for anything in any given moment. You brought forth this podcast and it has saved you and many others. If you kept it, if you held on to it, remember the fruit doesn't belong to the tree, it belongs to the ecosystem. Our job is to say yes to our yes. When it's a yes, I say yes. When it's a no, I say no. But my job is to be true to it. Because the more true I am to that thing, it will save not just me, but millions of other people. So that's what I would say to Zai.
Powerful. And I love it too, because it's not only, here's the definition, we are on this journey together, because you are learning what it means to be a man in every single interaction you're having with your wife, with your children, with every other person that you come into contact with. I want to pause and recognize the significance and the serendipity of what you just said with this podcast today. Ceremonially is the 4-year anniversary of the first Building Men podcast, all the way back in July 1st of 2020. I just recognized that right now when you said that. So to have you on as a guest, it's truly an honor, my man. Before I ask my last question, Preston, where do we find you? How do we get all the stuff? Figure out where you are, connect with you?
Yes, at Preston Smiles on YouTube, Instagram, and all the things. PrestonSmiles.com/book if you would like to get my new book, Spiritual Millionaire.
Perfect. We'll put all that information in the show notes for everyone as well. Last question before I let you go is, if I'm a young man listening to this podcast, or the parent of that young man listening to this podcast right now, and there's one thing that I can do when I hit pause or stop on this episode, and by doing this one thing, you've given us a million things that we can do, but this one thing can really, really change the trajectory of where we're heading in our life. What's that one thing?
Got it. Easily. It is an assignment I give all of my clients, and it is, they're called joy alarms, where I tell my clients, as soon as we start working together, you're going to put 3 to 5 alarms in your phone. Every time the alarm goes off, you're going to burst into spontaneous, reasonless joy. Just give your body, your brain, everything the signal that creativity, joy, play is all here right now. And then when the alarm goes off, you go right back to your life. And then when the alarm goes off again, you go right back to it. What we're doing is creating a new baseline. We're bringing, we're creating a new normal where we're giving the body and the mind and everything the signal that there is something to be grateful for, something to be joyful for. Now, if you start and you need it to be about something, perfect. I had a client who he had his wife and every one of his children's names. So the wife would go off first, joy alarm goes off. He thought about his wife for a second and just would be going to complete gratitude about his wife. And then the next kid and the next kid. And that right there will change everything, because a lot of us are, and this is a whole nother subject, are moving through a lot of pressure. It's not easy to like do life right now. And we don't necessarily realize how much challenge and thickness that we're moving through. And so if you can get ahead of it and get proactive about it by keeping your baseline of where you live from in joy, that will create the space for everything else to happen.
Love that. The joy alarm and what would love do now is a question to ask yourself and your children. Truly powerful hour, my man. I really appreciate you being here. Truly grateful for you. And those of you that are listening, go buy the books, buy them for other people. I am not blowing smoke up your ass here when I say that this book is a really powerful resource, not only for young men, but for anyone who has a pulse. There's so many nuggets of greatness in this book. I'm looking forward to reading your next book as well. Preston Smiles, cool as the other side of the pillow, my man. I really, really appreciate you being here. For the audience, if this resonated with you in any way, shape, or form, consider liking it, reviewing it, rating it, and more than anything, sharing it out with anyone that you think might benefit from this message. Go one step further than you thought you could go. We'll see you next time on Building Men.